Buenos dias, y'all. This is Real Talk in 10, your quick rundown of the headlines impacting our communities, our families, and Latinos across the country. And we have a lot to get through. Today is Tuesday, May 26th, and we have a runoff here in Texas. And honestly, a lot of people vote without ever being told the history behind what a runoff election actually is. And think about it. Do you know the history of a runoff? Most people hear the word runoff and think it just means nobody got over 50%. So now there's a second election between the top candidates. And yeah, that sounds neutral, but history matters because the runoff systems became heavily used across the South during Jim Crow. And if you don't know what Jim Crow was, it was a system of racist laws and policies created after slavery ended to keep Black Americans segregated, politically powerless, and economically controlled. It was racist, and it was set up that way. It controlled upward mobility systemically. We're talking separate schools, separate bathrooms, separate water fountains. Americans being blocked from voting through violence, intimidation, literacy tests, and poll taxes. It was legalized segregation, and it was normalized. It was okay. And as Black Americans gained voting rights and Latino communities started growing politically, runoff systems became another tool that could be used to dilute coalition voting power. Because under a regular plurality system, a candidate can win with the most votes even if they don't reach a majority. So if somebody hits 45 and somebody else hits 30 and somebody else 20, well, the 45 wins. But with the runoff system, if no one gets over 50%, there's a second election. And historically, that second election gave political establishments another chance to consolidate power and stop candidates backed by Black and brown communities. That is the history of the runoff. It was used as a second chance to be like, hey, just kidding, we're all going to get behind this white guy now, and we're going to win. And that's why these groups keep talking about this system today. And this conversation matters because people sometimes think voter suppression only look like task or people physically being blocked from polling places, but suppression also happens structurally. It happens through the maps. It happens through closing polling locations. It happens through long wait times for minority locations. It happens through language barriers, and that's a big one. In the state of Texas, Mexicans have always been here. Did you know that Texas didn't fully begin translating legislative documents into Spanish until 1975? Arizona also passed laws in the early 1900s requiring English proficiency to vote or hold office. Some of that language still exists in their constitution today. And this is because there was a lot of Latinos, there was a lot of Mexicans already in this country. They didn't want us voting. And even now, voting access remains a major legal and political battle across the country. We see what Texas Republicans have done with redrawing congressional maps in ways that reduce Black and brown political representation here in Texas before the midterms. And they did this because Donald Trump asked them to. Donald Trump called up Governor Abbott and said, get me more seats, and he did it. And according to the NAACP, Texas is only around 40% white, yet white voters control nearly 3/4 of congressional seats. How is that possible? And courts have repeatedly found Texas violated voting protections after redistricting cycles. So when people say history doesn't matter anymore, this is why people push back. Because it does. Because systems do not appear out of nowhere. It's important we know our history. It's important we know why these systems are in place and how they came to be. And now switching gears because this next story sounds like something straight out of a disaster movie. And I just can't believe we're even talking about this today. Over 40,000 people in Southern California were evacuated after a massive industrial chemical tank started overheating and swelling. And it was insane, you guys. You were seeing all the aerial footage. Officials feared what's known as a BLEV explosion, basically a boiling liquid vapor explosion. Sounds pretty normal, right? The tank reportedly contained around 7,000 gallons of methacart, however you say that, a highly flammable industrial chemical used in manufacturing. So what's crazy is that this place was like in of the town. Families were forced to leave their homes for days, okay? People were scrambling to find hotels during Memorial Day weekend. This is when all of this is going down. Parents were trying to get medications because people are just living their normal life, not expecting for a freaking tank to blow up in their neighborhood. Okay? Residents were trying to move their pets. Seniors were trying to move out of their apartments. A quinceañera was reportedly disrupted because guests were evacuating nearby neighborhoods. And people were sitting there asking the same question. A lot of Americans always ask when things are going down like this. How is this possible? How are these facilities operating right in the middle of residential communities? What oversight failed? How old were these systems? What corners were being cut? Because this keeps happening across the country, not just in California. We hear a lot of it in California because people speak up, but this is happening everywhere. Whether it's chemical plants, train derailments, refinery leaks, pipelines, or massive industrial facilities, people are constantly told everything is safe until suddenly it isn't. And who pays for it? The taxpayer, the residents. And then regular families are out there paying the price. Okay? Not the shareholders, not executives, not the CEOs, not the VPs. Families do. Communities do. It disrupts everyone that lives in that vicinity. People lose work, they lose time, they lose money, they lose peace of mind. And right now, investigators are reportedly looking into whether safety systems at the facility failed and whether hotels illegally price gouged evacuated residents during the emergency. I think they did. I think hotels said, hey, you know what? Prices are going up. We're going to charge them all this money. But you know what? This story is so much bigger because we can connect the dots to what is happening right now. Okay? Corporations push more industrial projects, massive AI infrastructure and data centers into communities. And people are asking who is actually protecting the public. And we're seeing this over and over in towns across the country, especially in a lot of rural communities where they're trying to put these data centers. And companies always talk about profits, growth, innovation, and expansion, but updating infrastructure, it costs money. And these people, they don't want to be paying out money, they want to be making money. Environmental protections cost money. They don't care about the environment, they care about their bank account. Safety upgrades cost money. They don't care about that. They're not the ones living in that neighborhood. And too often, companies gamble that nothing bad will happen and they fill their pockets by cutting corners until it does. And we got to move on to this next story because it is a curveball. I did not see this coming. Senator Chris Van Hollen just published one of the strongest opinion pieces we've seen from a major Democrat on Israel and Palestine. This is the senator who advocated for Kimar Abrego Garcia, who went all the way to El Salvador, if you remember. And politically, this is a major shift that we're seeing across the country. He openly says Democrats failed by giving unconditional support to Israeli government while settlements expanded and Palestinians lost land and rights. Girl, we've been saying this. We've been saying this, and now a senator is saying this out loud to the New York Times. He says Democrats must be willing to condition military aid and use American leverage. He talks about apartheid conditions in the West Bank. That means segregated. That means like the Palestinians are less in the West Bank. And there's so much documentation about this. He talks about Gaza and the destruction there. He talks about seeing aid blocked while children starved in Gaza. And whether people agree with him or not, I like this conversation, you guys. This is a major change in how some Democrats are publicly speaking about this issue. And we just got to keep talking about it because for years, many politicians avoided criticizing the Israeli government publicly out of fear of political backlash. And I think through the years, people's mindsets have been changing on what is going on in that part of the world. And now more Democrats are openly doing it as more people are seeing the truth. And it reflects a growing divide inside the Democratic Party. And here's another kicker. Van Hollen also argues that criticism of the Israeli government should not automatically be treated as anti-Semitism. And that distinction has become one of the biggest political debates happening in America right now, especially as protests, campus crackdowns, Gaza coverage, and U.S. military aid continue dominating headlines. Whether people agree or disagree with his position, one thing is clear right now. The political conversation around Israel and Palestine inside the Democratic Party is changing fast. And politicians are starting to realize voters are paying attention. And we do not want these foreign governments paying and funding our candidates. Voters do not want our money going to foreign governments abroad, funding wars and genocide. This is a movement that continues to grow and take shape one district at a time, one representative at a time. And it is a movement that will continue to grow. A lot of people's position has changed on Israel and what we have known growing up and what we are seeing right now with this government. And I think that distinction is very important of the Israeli government and the Israeli people. But like always, what do you think?